Okay, let's get to the town hall. This is really, it was interesting stuff. So CNN last night was supposed to be a debate and previously had been one that they had floated where Donald Trump would appear. They ended up turning it into a town hall. And there were a couple of different areas which we thought were interesting. First and foremost is one that Kamala has really struggled on, this question of what would you do differently from Biden? And then also, have you ever made a mistake? What I put in those two is the category of like political introspection and the opportunity to clean up something that you see with the American people. Frankly, I thought she had a terrible answer, but you can make up your mind. Let's take a listen.
I don't think I've ever heard the former president admit a mistake. A lot of politicians don't. Is there something you can point to in your life, political life, or in your life in the last 4 years that you think is a mistake that you have learned from?
I mean, I've made many mistakes, and they range from, you know, if you've ever parented a child, you know you make lots of mistakes too. In my role as vice president, I mean, I've probably worked very hard at making sure that I am well versed on issues, and I think that is very important. It's a mistake not to be well versed on an issue and feel compelled to answer a question.
What? Yes. Got it.
You know, it's so funny because she struggles the most, I feel like, almost in friendly settings.
Yeah, I totally agree.
When, you know, when she sat down with Brett Baier, I know you and I had a different analysis of that interview, but you could, one we shared the assessment of was her debate performance, right?
Yeah.
She knew it was going to be adversarial. She prepared like crazy. And the questions, none of them were like, this sort of soft and squishy, like, tell me about you. And that's when she struggles, is when you get the softball, like, tell me about a mistake you made, or tell me about, you know, something personal that requires you to be like, say something that wasn't in the briefing book. That's when she really struggles. And also, I think in these settings that are more friendly, I also don't think she prepares to the same degree.
I agree.
And comes in with she doesn't come in the same mental space and with the same level of preparation that she does for a Brett Baier or a Trump interview. So yeah, when you ask her just to say something like normal and human, she hasn't studied the answer and she struggles.
The crazy part about preparation, she didn't do anything yesterday. If you look at her schedule, she had one thing, that 3-minute press conference on John Kelly. She took no questions. That was it. She was at her house preparing for this CNN town hall. So what were you doing when you were preparing? It's mystifying. Another area where Cooper really caught her was on immigrant. This was actually a fun short circuit moment because Democrats and Kamala clearly are used to 4 years of making fun of Trump on the border wall and of being totally opposed to his border policy. Of course, ever since she became the candidate, she's like, no, I agree with the border bill, and that at the very least contains some of Trump's border policy. So she is short circuit halfway in between because she has the old routine, and Cooper's like, hold on, wait a second, don't you also support a border wall? And you can watch like the gears turning in her head. Let's take a listen.
Is a border wall stupid?
Well, let's talk about Donald Trump and that border wall. So remember, Donald Trump said Mexico would pay for it? Come on, they didn't. How much of that wall did he build? I think the last number I saw is about 2%. And then when it came time for him to do a photo op, you know where he did it? In the part of the wall that President Obama built.
But you're agreeing to a bill that would earmark $650 million to continue building that wall.
I pledge that I am going to bring forward that bipartisan bill to further strengthen and secure our border. Yes, I am. And I'm going to work across the aisle to pass a comprehensive bill that deals with a broken immigration system. I think Jackson's question, part of it was to acknowledge that America has always had migration, but there needs to be a legal process for it. People have to earn it. And that's the point that I think is the most important point that can be made, which is we need a president who is grounded in common sense and practical outcomes. Like, let's just fix this thing. Let's just fix it. Why is there any ideological perspective on it? Let's just fix the problem.
To fix the problem, you're doing this compromise bill. It does call for $650 million that was earmarked under Trump to actually still go to build the wall.
I am not afraid of good ideas where they occur.
So you don't think it's stupid anymore?
I think what he did and how he did it did not make much sense because he actually didn't do much of anything. I just talked about that wall, right? We just talked about it. He didn't actually do much of anything.
But you do want to build some wall.
I want to strengthen our border.
See, this is
brutal.
You know, I've been a critic of this major immigration. Imagine going back to 2016 and telling us that a Democrat would flail around and stumble and not know what to say on what is the border wall good or bad.
Great point.
Like smart or not. And you know, I know what they're doing is their ideas like, let's try to blunt this idea that she's too liberal and just going to open the borders and blah, blah, blah. But I just think this answer right here exemplifies why. I mean, obviously, I have issues with the morality of their new, like, we want to be more hawkish. We're going to try to get to Trump's right on immigration policy. Like, I have moral
They're
issues
going to finish
with
the
that.
wall, Krystal.
But this answer exemplifies why the politics of it are a mess too. And, you know, she goes back to this tick of when something's uncomfortable, she laughs. So we saw this in both of the last two questions. And so
I do sympathize. I do it too.
She's trying to make a joke about Trump and just hope that Anderson is going to move away. And to his credit, he's like, but wait a second. You used to say the border wall is dumb. Now you're saying you need money for the border wall. And she can't say anything other than like, well, the way he did it is bad because he didn't build enough border wall, but also not willing to go back on me saying that the border wall was dumb and bad. So it's just a mess. And it exacerbates the issues around she doesn't stand for anything and she's a bit of a lightweight. That's what kind of comes across in this question. So yeah, again, to me, this is example number one of why I think the way that they have approached immigration by just totally ceding to the Republican argument has been a moral number one, but political mistake because it opens you up for moments like this, which are really fundamentally unanswerable given the position they've staked out.
Well, twofold. So you either own it and then you don't start out by reverting to your 2016 talking points about the border wall and then get called out there almost immediately, or like you said, you don't change your position or whatever in the first place. But when you try and do both, you look like an idiot, and that's really what came through.
I mean, if you were really going to do this pivot, probably the best thing to do would be like, look, you know what? I was wrong.
Yeah, exactly. That would link with the mistake.
We saw that and we adjusted, and that's what I'm going to do. I learn. I am not so ideological that I don't adjust for new facts and realities. And the reality is blah, 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 blah.
That's what I would say.
Like,
yeah, and that's a good answer.
That would be a lot better. But, you know, politicians, they never want to admit that they got anything wrong. They think it makes them look weak and bad. Whereas stumbling around like this in a completely nonsensical way just makes it look like you don't stand for anything, and
there you go.
You probably don't.
All right, she got a question too on high prices and inflation. These were all, by the way, actual unregistered voters, at least from what we can tell. They don't seem as planted as last time, so let's take a listen.
Let me just ask you about price gouging. I looked at your plan. You talk about going after price gougers, and I'm quoting from the plan, on essential goods during emergencies or times of crisis. I get that. How does that help, though, someone like Eric with prices that for years, the grocery prices just been high?
Well, first of all, Anderson, as you know, and obviously CNN has been covering extensively what has been happening in the state of Georgia, North Carolina, Florida. It's a real issue. I was Attorney General of California. I was the top law enforcement officer of the biggest state in the country. I took this issue on because it affects a lot of people. And I'm not going to apologize for the fact that we need to actually deal with accountability when these, not all, in fact, most don't, but when companies are taking advantage of the desperation and the need of the American people. We saw it actually during the pandemic as well, where because of supply chain issues, there was a reduction of supply, and then they would inflate the price of everyday necessities. Not to mention, by the way, again, Donald Trump should be here tonight to talk with you and answer your questions. He's not. He refused to come. But understand that part of his plan is to put in place a national sales tax of at least 20% on everyday goods and necessities. And that, by economist estimates, independent economists, would cost you as the American consumer and taxpayer an additional $4,000 a year.
So, that remains one of her better moments. Now, in terms of what they're closing with, you hear some of that. You're hearing a lot of the character stuff as well. Maybe that's a media thing. I'm not so sure. But, I wanted to do at least, I guess, a fair presentation of how it went for her.
Well, I think it appears that they're spending a lot of money in swing states on ads that focus on that message right there.
Right. Yeah.
And it also appears from the polling on who do you trust on various economic issues that some of this messaging has broken through. There was a Bloomberg swing state poll. Maybe we can add this in post, guys, so people can see. But on every economic issue that they surveyed, Kamala Harris had closed the trust gap or even surpassed Trump as the candidate that swing state voters trust more. So on taxes, Kamala Harris had a little bit of an advantage. On interest rates, it was very close. On housing costs, she had an advantage. On cost of everyday goods, they were basically tied. On healthcare costs, advantage. Gas prices was the one where he had the largest gap, but even there, she had closed it significantly. So, I do think some of this is breaking through. I think the relentless focus in terms of the ad dollars has worked, and it has become an area that is less of a vulnerability for her than it might otherwise have been. And I think that the other question that people have is like, they may like her plans better. They may not have confidence that any of it is really going to happen. And I think that's a general statement about the sort of reasonable, pragmatic nihilism that people have about anything getting done in Washington at this point, which is not, which is not illogical.
Definitely.
Given the, given how there's just nothing but gridlock as far as the eye can see in Washington, D.C. So in any case, I do think that she deserves credit for the set of policies she's put together. The ads that they're running on these issues are actually very effective, I think. And the way that she's messaged on it has clearly done her some favors with voters.
It's done a little bit of favor, and she's closed that gap on the economy, which is critical. If she does end up squeezing it out, that's actually going to be a key reason why.
That's true.
So, final thing we just wanted to show was David Axelrod just admitting some of the unmittable previously about, quote, word salad city from Kamala Harris in his after action on the town hall. Let's take a listen.
When she doesn't want to answer a question, her habit is to kind of go to word salad city. And she did that on a couple of answers. One was on Israel. Anderson asked a direct question, would you be stronger on Israel than Trump? And there was a 7-minute answer, but none of it related to the question he was asking.
True.
I mean, right? Yeah. Word salad city. It was clear too, other people there felt kind of uncomfortable, and I saw Van Jones say that as well. That's where the whole, she has to be flawless. He's almost doing a media criticism element there. But Axelrod ran the Obama campaign, and he gets it.
I do think that it is fair to say Trump is just he just is a unique politician. He is held to a different standard. There is no doubt about it. If a story like the one we covered with Dave Weigel, the equivalent of that, I don't even know what it would be, with Kamala Harris came out, it would be a big story, like a close Jeffrey Epstein associate and some sort of, sexual scandal. It would be a big media story. And because it's Trump, it's not. Trump is given all kinds of interviews where you read his words and you're like, I just literally don't even know what you were talking about right now. And again, it just doesn't get the same level of attention and scrutiny as when Kamala Harris goes to word salad city. But I mean, that's kind of just the political reality and landscape that we live in. He does have his own set of unique standards that he is held to that are just different than literally any other politician, Republican or Democrat, that exists.
Absolutely. Shall not see his like again, as Shakespeare once said. Hey, if you like that video, hit the like button or leave a comment below. It really helps get the show to more people.
And if you'd like to get the full show ad-free and in your inbox every morning, you can sign up at breakingpoints.com.
That's right. Get the full show, help support the future of independent media at breakingpoints.com.